Robert ShedLog for Sunday the 9th of February 2021. Hello, Happy New Year, I'm Robert and welcome to my shed where I've been working on this beautiful, desk pedestal. This is the back end that you're looking at, which is like a little bit odd. This is what's been taking the time. This is a PC stand for the desk, which I started before Christmas and it's just taking a really long time because I use ridiculous joints. So you've got a double through mortise and tenon here, double blind mortise and tenon on that side, and this top piece is held on with mitre joints, which I wish I hadn't done because none of them are simple ones you can cut with a saw. But it's done now. I should have just done a dovetail box after that. Right, so this is the next thing to do. I need to hold this piece of wood onto this piece of wood, and also hold this piece of wood, and this leg in place using this. So what I've done is this is the back rail, I've gone and put an extra long dovetail in here. I'm going to put an extra long pinboard in both of these, and there's enough angle there that it should hold this piece flush against this piece and hold this piece in place as well. That will give me exactly the right position on this and this, because positioning is essential on these walls because these walls will have drawers. Drawers need to be flush. And this piece is my leg that's going to sit up in here using this half-blind castle joint that holds this top rail in as well. And there's I'll probably show you on this side, there's a half-blind dovetail pinboard to hold this half-blind dovetail pin, as it's through dovetail pin actually, to make a half-blind dovetail pin joint. And same I'm going to put on this side to hold this piece in. In fact, I did that last night, except I did it wrong. So this is what happens when a worker makes a mistake. That is a beautiful pinboard for a half-blind dovetail joint, which I've infilled with a filler piece. A little bit of tear out on the filler piece there, but I'm not going to notice that in the back of the cupboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut half of this, and then put that back on the correct side. So it'll still be half-blind dovetail joint, it won't be quite as thick as it was previously, so it won't be quite as strong. But there's no real lateral movement to accommodate, so that shouldn't matter. I've still got a third of this piece of wood entirely intact, so I've still got 1 inch by 3/4 of an inch to act as supporting weight for what will be probably one of the bigger corners, because I've got a kettle in the back corner and whatever else I put in the back corner on the desk is going to be putting its weight primarily on this piece of wood, plus the way it's a desktop as well. Although that will be divided along these two legs as well, which are massively stronger. So I think strength-wise we're okay. So let's get on and cut this piece of wood. I'm absolutely sure I've got the right side this time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mark. I'm going to do the cutout now. Let's say you should mark the face, but it's going to mark it there. It's all marked so I can know which side I'm cutting. Now this piece, this is quite easy because the cutout's at the bottom and the longer side of the dovetail's at the bottom, so that the dovetail's right at the corner and the pinboard doesn't snap off. Which means this is the outside, this is the inside, so I want to cut out this half of the wood. And because it's the dovetail side, I don't need to be particularly accurate. Do get it in the vise straight. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark this out with a marking gauge been having some problems with my marking gauge slipping again. But that's what I have to do. It's going to make a line parallel to the edge. Doesn't have to be exactly halfway or anything. It's about half. It should be absolutely fine. Now I'm just going to cut this halfway. I'm going to watch the reflection in the saw to make sure it's cutting properly. I was cutting straight lines. As some of you may know, I like coarse saws, which cut faster but are a bit more tricky to start. So, there we go. Not quite on the line, but I'm parallel to it, so I'm happy. Slightly there, shouldn't be a problem. And now to get the to my side. This is basically just like cutting a half flap joint. Move half the piece of wood. This is a lot easier because I've got the shoulder to guide it. There we go. So that's half the joint now. Not gone quite straight there. Straighten that up with a chisel. Just make it a bit tidier. Take off the saw marks. Okay. So that's, well, I've taken off 2/3 there, I'm going to take off half. Still strong enough. Right, the next thing, oh, that's a lot easier. You know, because it now registers the edge quite nicely because of the cutaway. That's interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the, let's draw around it to mark the edges. You have to get right into the corner, properly underneath the wood. Some people actually move the wood, the width of the knife blade, not the sizes exactly. I'm not really that fussed. It won't be visible. It's in the back wall, so that should do it. And I also need to mark the depth. To do that, I'm going to go back to the marking gauge, set the marking gauge to the depth of the thickness of the cutout. Check it's not slipping, and then mark that along here, position, and then I need my square. Take the piece of marks I did already and put those down to the knife point, to the mark So that's the shape I've got to remove. Next thing to do is probably to break out the hammer and chisel. Normally for a joint like this I would start by cutting out a diagonal, but because it's so thin I don't think there's any point in doing that. So this happens with the width of this chisel, so I can just line that up and make a mark. Again this way. What I'm doing here is marking the lines. I don't particularly care about cutting out at this point. Do the marks a bit thicker. A bit. Hammer ready. My mallet. Again, I'm not doing anything particularly strong, I'm just using the mallet to give me a little bit more speed than I'll get with my hand. I'm not really whacking it hard as if I was cutting out at this stage. Get that nice and clean lines so that I can have something to work to. Okay. Right, now I need to support the wood because I'm going to do some real cutouts. That's tricky because what I normally would do is put it in the vise, because right at the end I can't, so I'm just going to clamp it down to the bench. May have to move it a few times, so I'm using quick release clamps, which don't hold it particularly firmly, but I'll stop it moving as I'm whacking it with a hammer. Right, so I like to start with my smallest chisel. I could probably afford to go up to the bigger one. You don't want anything wider than the mouth, but this is through the width of the mouth, so I should get away with that. And first needs to cut this corner because that's where the tear out's most likely to happen. I'm going to set this bevel side out, just take off a thin slice at the front. Already tearing out. Front piece is always the hardest. The first cuts are always the hardest because it's on the surface, it's likely to tear out. Just make sure the fibres are cut properly. Again, because it's not really a strong vise, is not what I can do there, but should be enough to. No, it's not. Okay, I'm going to flip this. Just get this properly started before I move on. So otherwise, it's going to be difficult. So the line up and line that up with the dovetail angle. Start. You always want to try and cut the first cuts across the grain so that you're basically telling the wood how to break apart. So once you've gone across the grain, you should quite simply remove only the pieces you wanted to remove and no further. That's better. Good. It doesn't really matter if there's a bit less than you want to take out, but when you take out too much, you've got a problem. Okay, so it's just me filling time on, whacking away. Right, that should be done. So let's take another piece, same width. Again, it's a problem because it's wanting. I've never had a joint start this badly before. And I usually manage to cut the corners first, which I haven't had a chance to do this time. And try to take off too much all at once, so I'm going to myself a little bit. There we go. It's just a matter of working your way through it, really. Right. Let's try and get a bit more out of this. Once you've got these nice lines, it's very easy to register the chisel. In the right place. Right. Fibers are trying to separate and I don't want them to. When you do this on camera, it all goes wrong. Okay. It's just a matter of wasting out the bits you don't want, really. carving. And the important thing is to take the top layer off first, and you end up with this. It doesn't matter if you get tear out in the middle because you won't see it. But in fact, you generally don't get tear out in the middle. You get tear out at the edges because that's where the wood is less supported. Now it should be fairly straight for sailing, just to waste out the middle. To save yourself a bit of time, you can try and cut the pin to be exactly the same size as your chisel, so you don't have to worry about doing one half and moving it and doing the other end. So it's much effort. I quite like the organic nature of just slightly different angles and everything. It shows it's handmade if you do that. So everything's too mechanical, you could have just used a rig. I'm going to turn it around again. This time I'm going to work the hole away from me, so a little bit safer. I'm just going to work my way down the edges. Again, it's the top you want first. In the middle is actually the easy bit. The mallet just gives you a little bit more power. It gets the job done a bit faster, but you don't need one. More control if you're just pushing. Important thing though is to always push away from your body, otherwise you injure yourself. Right. Just see when it's done. So a bit of tidy up now, and then we'll be ready. I always forget that the camera can't see what I can see. I need to get a close-up camera at some point. That's literally all the effort there is to making one of these. It's not a big job. just one that requires quite a bit of precision and not going over the line. Okay. So let's clean this up. No dust, just little chips of wood. That looks like I've gone around a corner a bit on the front there a little bit, but I'll present them and see what happens. There we go. One right angle joint. So that's not going to interfere with this. This looks now like it's part of this piece of wood, which is going to confuse anyone looking at the architecture, but that's how that filler piece came to be. So that's all I'm going to bother showing you this week. Join me again. I say this week, and it's been 2 months since the last one, so a month and a bit since the last one. So join me again next time. I will keep chipping away at things. I'll definitely do one when the desk is finished. I'm very near the point of putting the desktop on, so I should be coming to that in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Until then, ta-ta!